Marcus Granger had buried his wife, built the largest cattle ranch in northern Wyoming, and trained himself to stop caring about anything beyond work. For 8 long years, nothing had broken through the wall around his heart. Not money, not success, not loneliness. But the moment he heard a weak, trembling breath behind a locked gear room inside an abandoned gunsmith shop, everything changed. He did not know who was hiding there. He did not know why someone had locked the door from the outside. He only knew one thing. Whoever was inside had been left there to die. And Marcus Granger had never been the kind of man who rode away while another human being begged for life without speaking a single word. The old gunsmith shop stood alone outside the small frontier town of Red Creek, Wyoming, surrounded by dusty roads and dry grass that stretched toward the distant hills. Time had nearly forgotten the little building. The wooden sign above the porch had faded until only a few letters remained. The roof sagged from years of harsh winters, and every board carried scars left behind by wind and rain. Still, the shop had always been dependable. Old Samuel Turner had owned it for nearly 30 years. Hunters, ranchers, and lawmen all trusted him to build the finest rifles in the territory. Marcus had ordered a custom hunting rifle almost 5 months earlier. Samuel had promised it would be ready before autumn. That morning in September of 1884, Marcus finally rode into Red Creek to collect it before heading back to his ranch. The first thing that caught his attention was the silence. Samuel always opened before sunrise. Smoke always drifted from the chimney. Coffee always filled the air with its warm smell. The old man usually whistled while polishing rifles behind the counter. This morning, there was nothing. Marcus remained in the saddle for several seconds, studying every detail. No wagon stood beside the building. No horses waited outside. Even the old brown dog that slept beneath the porch was gone. His instincts warned him long before his boots touched the ground. He tied his horse to the hitching post without taking his eyes off the half-open front door. His right hand rested naturally near the revolver at his belt, not because he expected trouble, but because years of ranch life had taught him that trouble rarely announced itself. He pushed the door open. Inside, the shop looked as though someone had left in the middle of a struggle. A chair lay on its side. Boxes of ammunition had spilled across the floor. One display shelf leaned crooked against the wall. A lantern rested on the counter, with no oil left inside. Marcus stepped farther into the room. The floor creaked beneath his boots. He did not try to hide the sound. If someone dangerous remained inside, he preferred facing them directly rather than chasing shadows. "Samuel," he called calmly. Only silence answered. He walked behind the counter. His rifle still rested exactly where Samuel had promised it would be, wrapped carefully in clean canvas. Marcus frowned. If thieves had attacked the shop, they would have stolen the expensive rifle first. Whatever had happened here had never been about robbery. He carefully placed the rifle back on the counter. That was when he heard it. Barely more than a whisper. A weak breath. Then another. It came from somewhere toward the back of the building. Marcus turned slowly. The sound came from the gear room where Samuel stored tools, spare rifle parts, leather slings, and repair supplies. The heavy wooden door stood shut. An iron lock secured it from the outside. Marcus's eyes narrowed immediately. Someone had locked another person inside. He grabbed the fallen chair from the floor and swung one of its thick legs against the lock. The first strike cracked the wood. The second ripped the metal latch loose. He kicked the door open. Darkness greeted him first. Then came the smell. Old blood. Dust. Fear. The air inside felt heavy enough to choke a man. Marcus waited a moment for his eyes to adjust. Something shifted behind several stacked supply crates. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said quietly. The movement stopped. "My name is Marcus Granger. I came for a rifle. Whoever locked this room is gone." "Nothing." He took one careful step forward. "If you can hear me," he continued, "I'm going to help you." Several long seconds passed before he heard the smallest voice. "I'm here." The words barely reached him. Marcus moved around the crates. What he found made him freeze. A young woman sat against the wall, with her knees pulled close to her chest. Her blonde hair hung loose and tangled around her shoulders. One sleeve of her dress had been torn away. Bruises covered one side of her face. Her wrists were raw where rough rope had rubbed through the skin. Blood stained the side of her skirt. Yet the first thing Marcus noticed was not her injuries. It was her eyes. They were frightened beyond words. But they were also proud. She looked at him like someone who had survived by refusing to surrender, even after every reason to hope had disappeared. "What is your name?" Marcus asked softly. She swallowed before answering. "Rebecca." "Rebecca, can you stand?" She tried. Her legs shook violently. She managed only 2 steps before collapsing. Marcus caught her before she struck the floor. She tensed immediately. "I can walk," she whispered. "I know you believe you can," Marcus replied gently, "but right now your body disagrees." She looked at him carefully. Most men would have mistaken her silence for weakness. Marcus recognized something different. She was deciding whether he deserved her trust. Finally, she nodded once. "Just don't leave me here." "I won't." Those 2 words came from Marcus without hesitation. He lifted her carefully into his arms. She was lighter than he expected. Far too light. As he carried her through the empty shop, she squinted against the bright morning sun. Without thinking, Marcus shifted slightly so his hat blocked the sunlight from reaching her swollen face. She noticed. He could tell by the brief look she gave him. He never explained why he had done it. He simply carried her outside. After settling her gently onto his horse, Marcus climbed into the saddle behind her. He wrapped one steady arm around her to keep her from falling. As they started toward Granger Ranch, neither spoke for nearly 15 minutes. Finally, Marcus broke the silence. "How long were you locked in there?" Rebecca stared at the trail ahead. "I lost count." "You weren't alone before that." "No." She closed her eyes. "I was traveling west with my older brother." Marcus waited. She seemed grateful that he wasn't rushing her. "We stopped in a settlement called Pine Hollow 3 days east of Red Creek." Her voice remained quiet. There was a businessman there. Everyone respected him. Marcus listened carefully. He owned freight wagons, cattle contracts, supply businesses. She paused. "That's what everyone believed." "And what did you discover?" Rebecca looked down at her injured hands. "My brother discovered people disappearing." Marcus stayed silent. He kept hearing about ranch hands who accepted work and never returned home. She swallowed again. Families searched for them. No one found them. My brother started asking questions. Her breathing grew uneven. One morning he vanished. Marcus felt the muscles in his jaw tighten. "I'm sorry." She shook her head. "Don't waste your sympathy." He glanced at her. "I need help finding him." Marcus studied the empty trail ahead. He had spent years avoiding other people's problems. Life had taught him painful lessons about getting involved. Yet something about this woman made walking away impossible. "What happened after your brother disappeared?" "I pretended to leave town. Instead, I stayed hidden and watched." Her voice became steadier. "I found records inside one of the freight offices." "What kind of records?" "Names." She looked directly at Marcus. "Dozens of names. Workers. Payments. Routes." People who vanished. Marcus felt his heartbeat slow. She continued. I remembered everything I read. But they caught me before I escaped. They beat me. They locked me inside Samuel's gear room. They expected nobody would ever open that door. Marcus looked toward the distant hills. They made one mistake. Rebecca frowned. What mistake? They left you alive. For the first time since he found her, the corner of her mouth almost moved. Almost. By late afternoon, the wide fields of Granger Ranch appeared across the valley. Hundreds of cattle grazed behind sturdy fences. Workers repaired barns, while horses moved quietly through the corrals. Everything on the ranch reflected years of honest work. Rebecca looked around in disbelief. This is yours? Marcus nodded. You own all this? I do. You should take me to the sheriff instead. Marcus kept writing. No. She looked surprised. Why not? Because I don't yet know which sheriff can be trusted. She stared at him for several seconds. You don't even know me. No. I could be lying. You could. She looked away again. Then why help me? Marcus answered without hesitation. Because bruises don't lie. The rope marks on your wrists don't lie. The blood on your dress doesn't lie. And no woman locks herself inside a gear room, hoping someone eventually finds her. Rebecca said nothing. When they finally reached the ranch house, an older woman hurried outside before Marcus even dismounted. Grace Sullivan had managed the Granger household for nearly 10 years. She had once worked as a nurse during a terrible frontier fever outbreak, and she recognized suffering the moment she saw it. She took one look at Rebecca. Oh, Lord. Marcus spoke calmly. Grace, this is Rebecca. She needs food, clean bandages, and a safe room. Grace nodded immediately. No questions. She gently helped Rebecca toward the front porch. Rebecca paused before entering the house. She turned back toward Marcus. You have no idea who you're standing against. Marcus met her eyes. Maybe not. The man behind this has money. He has friends. He has people everywhere. Marcus remained completely still. So do I. She studied him one final time before disappearing inside. Marcus stayed alone on the porch long after the front door closed. The ranch bustled around him exactly as it had every other day. Workers laughed in the distance. Hammers struck fresh lumber. Cattle drifted across the fields. Everything looked ordinary. But Marcus knew his life had changed forever the moment he broke open that locked door. Somewhere beyond those Wyoming hills, powerful men believed Rebecca Morgan would never tell anyone what she had seen. They were about to learn they had made the biggest mistake of their lives. Marcus remained on the porch until Grace returned nearly half an hour later. She closed the front door quietly behind her and walked toward him with the steady confidence of a woman who had seen every kind of injury frontier life could leave behind. She finally let me clean the wounds, Grace said. How bad? She'll recover. Grace paused before continuing. But someone wanted to make sure she never spoke again. Marcus looked across the ranch without answering. The bruises will fade, Grace continued. Her wrists will heal. She lost blood, but not enough to threaten her life now that she's eating. What worries me isn't what happened to her body. Marcus turned toward her. It's what happened to her trust. He understood exactly what Grace meant. Rebecca had accepted help because she had no choice, not because she believed anyone deserved it. Grace rested one hand on the porch rail. She asked only one question. What was it? Whether anyone here could hear strangers riding toward the ranch before they reached the gate. Marcus's jaw tightened. She's expecting them. No, Grace corrected gently. She's certain they'll come. Marcus remained silent. Grace knew him well enough not to push further. If you plan on helping that girl, she said quietly, then help her completely. After she disappeared inside, Marcus walked alone toward the ranch office. The room had always been the center of everything he built. Every cattle contract, every land purchase, every freight agreement, every shipment. Marcus believed that a man who ignored his own records eventually lost control of his own life. He unlocked the tall cabinet beside his desk and removed 4 years of business ledgers. Most people would have sent a clerk to search through them. Marcus trusted his own eyes more than anyone else's. He lit another lamp, even though the afternoon sun still poured through the windows. Then he began reading. Every freight contract, every delivery receipt, every wagon schedule, every signature. Hour after hour passed without interruption. At first, everything appeared ordinary. Large shipments of grain, leather, tools, lumber, livestock supplies. Nothing unusual. Then one small detail caught his attention. A delivery route passed through Pine Hollow almost every month. Marcus frowned. He remembered the name immediately. Rebecca had mentioned that settlement. He opened another ledger. The same route appeared again. And again. And again. Always handled by the same freight company. Whitmore Transport Company. Marcus leaned back slowly. Nathan Whitmore. The wealthy businessman everyone respected across western Wyoming. Marcus had known him nearly 5 years. They had shared dinner together, negotiated cattle contracts, even attended town meetings side by side. Nathan had always spoken politely, always paid on time, always smiled. Marcus opened another ledger, then another. The pattern became impossible to ignore. Legitimate cargo traveled through his freight routes, but hidden among ordinary deliveries were strange shipments with incomplete records. Several wagons listed fewer supplies than their size required. Some delivery signatures could barely be read. Others looked almost identical despite supposedly belonging to different men. Marcus spread every ledger across the desk. The pieces slowly fit together. His ranch routes had unknowingly helped move Whitmore's freight across Wyoming. If Rebecca spoke the truth, Marcus himself had unknowingly helped hide a criminal operation. He closed his eyes briefly. For years he had believed hard work alone made an honest man. Now he wondered whether honesty required paying attention to more than numbers. A knock interrupted his thoughts. Grace stepped inside. She's awake. Marcus stood immediately. Has she eaten? A little soup. She asked to see you. He followed Grace down the long hallway toward the east guest room. Rebecca sat beside the window, wearing one of Grace's simple cotton dresses. Her face remained bruised, but the swelling had eased. Her hair had been washed and tied neatly behind her shoulders. Most important of all, her eyes looked clearer. She still appeared exhausted, but she looked ready to fight again. Marcus pulled a chair beside the bed. How are you feeling? Better, she answered honestly. He appreciated that. I've been reading business records all afternoon. Rebecca looked up. My freight routes connect with Nathan Whitmore's company. I thought they might. Marcus studied her carefully. You never seemed surprised when I said I owned a ranch. No. Why? Because my brother mentioned your name. Marcus frowned. When? Before he disappeared. She folded her hands together. Daniel believed someone respected enough might eventually expose Whitmore. He mentioned 3 names. Marcus waited. 2 were politicians. The 3rd was yours. Marcus felt something settle heavily inside him. What did he say? Rebecca looked toward the window. He said Marcus Granger was one of the few wealthy men whose reputation couldn't be bought. Silence filled the room. Marcus had spent years believing reputation mattered only in business. Now it suddenly carried a far greater weight. What exactly did Daniel discover? Marcus asked. Rebecca closed her eyes for a moment, carefully gathering her thoughts. He started talking to workers. Men hired by Whitmore. They accepted seasonal jobs. They disappeared. The company claimed they simply moved west. But their families never believed it. Marcus remained completely still. Daniel interviewed mothers, wives, children. Every family told the same story. The letters stopped. The money stopped. The men simply vanished. She opened her eyes again. My brother wasn't a lawman. He wanted to become a newspaper writer. He believed every lie eventually left behind evidence. So he collected evidence. Marcus leaned forward slightly. What kind? Names, dates, contracts, letters. He kept detailed journals. And then, Rebecca swallowed. He sent me one final letter. He wrote that he'd found a hidden labor camp somewhere in the mountains. A place where workers were forced to stay. They couldn't leave. Marcus's expression hardened. And after that, the next letter wasn't from Daniel. It came from Whitmore's office. It claimed my brother accepted another job farther north. She looked directly at Marcus. I knew immediately they were lying. So I traveled west myself. Marcus understood the rest. You found Whitmore's office. She nodded. I found ledgers. What was inside them? Rebecca's voice became quieter. Payments, bribes, names of missing workers, supplies delivered somewhere that never appeared on official maps. She closed her eyes briefly. I memorized everything before they caught me. Marcus watched her carefully. You remember it all. She gave the smallest nod. I always remember what I read. Marcus believed her. There was something about the certainty in her voice that left no room for doubt. He stood and walked toward the office window. Outside, ranch hands repaired fencing while children chased chickens across the yard. Ordinary life continued peacefully. Only he knew how quickly everything might change. Without turning around, he asked quietly, Rebecca, if we expose Nathan Whitmore, do you understand what he'll do? I already know. He'll try to kill me again. Marcus faced her. And yet you're still willing to continue. She answered without hesitation. My brother risked everything. I won't let him disappear without anyone knowing why. Marcus looked at her for several long seconds. Then he made a decision. I believe you. Rebecca stared at him. You've known me less than 1 day. I've known dishonest people much longer. Silence settled between them again. Finally, she asked, What are you going to do? Marcus crossed the room and opened the office ledger he had carried with him. I spent the afternoon tracing Whitmore's freight routes. He placed several pages before her. I think I already have evidence. Rebecca studied the papers. Within seconds, she pointed to 3 different entries. These. Marcus looked down. What about them? The shipment sizes don't match the wagon weights. She pointed farther down the page. And these signatures? They're written by the same person. Marcus stared. He had missed it completely. She continued reading. This route appears every 6 weeks. So does this one. They're connected. Marcus felt genuine admiration growing inside him. Her memory was remarkable. But even more impressive was the speed at which she recognized patterns. She looked up. Marcus, you've already helped expose him. I just don't think you realized it. Marcus nodded slowly. Neither did I. At that moment, another knock sounded on the bedroom door. Grace stepped inside. A writer just arrived. Marcus turned. Who is it? A former ranch hand. He says his name is Jacob Turner. Marcus recognized the name immediately. Jacob had worked on Granger Ranch several years earlier, before leaving for better wages with a freight company. Marcus suddenly remembered which company. Whitmore Transport. His heartbeat slowed. Where is he now? In the kitchen. He says he has information. Marcus and Rebecca exchanged one silent look. Neither spoke. Neither needed to. Something much larger than either of them had just begun. Marcus quietly closed the ledger. If Jacob came here willingly, he said, then Whitmore's secrets are already starting to fall apart. Rebecca stood despite Grace's warning. I'm coming too. You should rest. I've rested enough. Marcus studied her bruised face. Every injury reminded him of what Whitmore's men had done. Yet behind those bruises stood a woman whose courage had never been broken. He finally gave a single nod. Then let's hear what Jacob has to say. Together they walked toward the kitchen, both knowing that whatever waited downstairs would pull them even deeper into a fight neither of them could walk away from. Jacob Turner looked older than Marcus remembered. His beard had turned gray around the edges, and the lines across his face spoke of years spent carrying burdens too heavy for one man. His clothes were dusty from hard riding, and there was a fresh cut across one hand that had been wrapped with a strip of cloth. The moment Marcus entered the kitchen with Rebecca beside him, Jacob stood from the table. His eyes settled on Rebecca's bruised face, and he lowered his head for a brief moment. I hope they hadn't killed you, he said quietly. They almost did, Rebecca answered. Jacob nodded as though he had expected that answer. Marcus closed the kitchen door. Tell me everything. Jacob took a deep breath before speaking. I worked for Nathan Whitmore almost 3 years. At first it looked like honest freight work. Then the night deliveries started. Rebecca and Marcus exchanged a quick glance. Jacob continued. They weren't transporting supplies. What were they moving? Marcus asked. People. Silence filled the room. They offered poor men good wages for seasonal work. Ranch hands, lumber workers, railroad laborers, men with families who needed money. Once they signed the contracts, they disappeared. Rebecca closed her eyes. My brother was right. Jacob nodded. They were taken to a hidden valley deep inside the Bighorn Mountains. Marcus remained calm, although every word tightened something inside him. What happened there? They were forced to work. Mining, timber, building storage sites. They received almost nothing. Anyone who resisted disappeared. Grace quietly covered her mouth. Marcus looked directly at Jacob. My wife's memory deserves honesty. So answer one question. Are they still alive? Jacob hesitated. Some are. And Daniel. I saw him. Rebecca stepped forward so quickly Grace reached for her arm. You saw my brother. Jacob nodded. About 12 days ago. Tears immediately filled Rebecca's eyes, but she forced herself to stay steady. Was he alive? Yes. Injured, but alive. She closed her eyes and whispered one word. Thank God. Marcus noticed something different in her face. For the first time since finding her, hope had replaced despair. Jacob reached into his coat and removed a folded piece of paper. I stole this before I escaped. Marcus unfolded it carefully. It was a rough map. Nothing official. Only hand-drawn trails leading toward a narrow valley surrounded by steep cliffs. Jacob pointed toward one section. Only one main road leads inside. Marcus studied it carefully. And another way. Jacob nodded. There is an old hunting trail across the western ridge. Few people know about it. Rebecca leaned closer. I remember hearing water. Jacob pointed again. A creek. It runs beside that ridge. Marcus immediately understood. Rebecca had unknowingly traveled near the hidden entrance while blindfolded. Jacob continued. They expect attacks through the main pass. No one watches the ridge closely. Marcus folded the map. We leave tomorrow. No, Jacob answered immediately. Marcus looked up. They already know Rebecca escaped. Everyone became still. How? I heard riders talking before I slipped away. They were searching every ranch between Red Creek and the mountains. They believe someone rescued her. Marcus walked to the window. Outside, the ranch hands finished their evening chores without knowing the danger moving toward them. He turned back. Then we leave tonight. Within the hour, every trusted ranch hand gathered inside the large equipment barn. Marcus told them everything. He spoke plainly. No dramatic speeches. No promises of glory. Only the truth. 43 missing workers. Families still waiting. A hidden camp. And innocent people who would die if nobody acted. When he finished, no one walked away. Every man volunteered. Grace prepared medical supplies while several women packed blankets, food, fresh water, and extra horses. Rebecca insisted on helping. Grace tried to stop her. You need rest. Rebecca smiled faintly. I've rested enough while others suffered. Marcus watched her quietly. She reminded him of someone. His late wife. A woman who believed people were worth risking comfort for. Hours after sunset, the rescue party rode into the mountains beneath a sky filled with stars. Marcus led one group toward the main pass. Jacob, Rebecca, and 6 trusted ranch hands followed the western ridge. Their horses moved carefully through narrow trails hidden beneath pine trees. No one spoke louder than a whisper. By dawn, they overlooked the hidden valley. Rebecca's breathing stopped. There. Smoke rose from several cabins below. Dozens of tired men worked behind rough wooden fences. Armed guards watched every movement. Jacob counted quietly. 14 guards. Marcus studied the camp. We stay with the plan. At exactly sunrise, Marcus's group rode openly toward the main entrance. The guards shouted. Rifles pointed toward the road. Every eye turned toward the approaching riders. Exactly as Marcus hoped. Meanwhile, Rebecca, Jacob, and the others slipped silently down the western ridge. They reached the rear storage buildings without being noticed. Rebecca hurried toward the largest cabin. Inside, she found dozens of exhausted workers sitting on rough wooden floors. Some looked too weak to stand. Others stared in disbelief. One man slowly lifted his head. His beard had grown long. His clothes hung loosely from his thin body. But Rebecca recognized him immediately. Daniel. He blinked. For several seconds, he simply stared. Then recognition reached his eyes. Rebecca! She ran to him. The brother and sister held each other tightly without speaking. Daniel's shoulders shook as years of fear finally broke. I thought you were dead, he whispered. They tried. But someone found me. She looked toward the doorway. Marcus. Daniel slowly turned. Marcus stood there with quiet determination. We're taking everyone home. Outside, shouting echoed across the valley. Whitmore's guards realized too late that another group had entered from behind. The prisoners were already leaving. Jacob and the ranch hands broke open every locked gate. Weak workers stumbled toward waiting horses. Grace's medical bags were passed from hand to hand as injured men received water and bandages. Then another voice rang across the valley. Marcus Granger. Nathan Whitmore stood near the main office, surrounded by 3 armed men. His expensive coat looked strangely out of place among the rough camp buildings. He smiled confidently. You've made a terrible mistake. Marcus stepped forward alone. No, you did. Whitmore laughed. You have no proof. Marcus calmly removed several folded papers from inside his coat. I have your freight records. Rebecca stepped beside him. I memorized your ledgers. Jacob walked forward. I worked for you. Daniel followed. I wrote everything down. One by one, workers stepped beside them. 43 frightened men who had finally found their voices. Whitmore's smile disappeared. For the first time in years, he understood something money could not buy. Witnesses. Before anyone could move, riders appeared along the eastern ridge. Territorial marshals. Several respected judges. Local newspaper reporters. Marcus had quietly sent letters before leaving the ranch. They had arrived exactly when needed. Whitmore looked around in disbelief. You planned this? Marcus shook his head. No. You planned your own downfall. The marshals arrested Whitmore, and every remaining guard without a single shot being fired. Months later, the trials became the largest criminal investigation Wyoming Territory had ever seen. Families finally learned what happened to their missing fathers, brothers, and sons. Those who survived returned home. Those who did not were finally given names instead of being forgotten. Daniel published every document he had risked his life to collect. The story spread across newspapers throughout the American West. Rebecca remained at Granger Ranch while helping families reconnect with the rescued workers. She slowly recovered from her injuries, though the memories stayed much longer than the scars. Marcus changed as well. For years, he believed success meant building the biggest ranch. He discovered something far greater. A man's true wealth was measured by the lives he chose to protect. One quiet evening nearly a year later, Marcus stood on the ranch porch watching the sun disappear behind the Wyoming mountains. Rebecca walked beside him. Do you ever think about that morning? She asked. The gunsmith shop. Marcus smiled softly. Every day. If you hadn't gone for that rifle. He looked toward the fading horizon. I almost didn't. Rebecca was silent. I'm glad you did. Marcus nodded. So am I. The old rifle still rested above the fireplace inside the ranch house. Visitors often admired its beautiful craftsmanship. Very few ever knew that Marcus Granger had ridden to Red Creek searching for a rifle. Instead, he had found a wounded stranger behind a locked gear room. And in saving one forgotten woman, he had rescued dozens of innocent lives and finally rediscovered the heart he believed he had buried forever.